Hi there, and welcome to Live Loved. I'm Amy Hirsch. I'm here with Julie Wright. And, I hope today's episode comes as a big relief to all of you who feel like you're just worn out from trying to do it all.
Yeah.
In our culture, in our society, I think women have so much pressure from so many different places. And we are focusing right now on a three-part series called True Beauty. How do we radiate from within and really, truly know what it's like to live loved? Julie, in your book, you talk about this type of woman.
hmm
She's found in the story of Ruth in the Bible. And you've really written about it in your book, Redeeming Eve, When a Woman Lives Loved. You point out some of the attributes of Ruth that can serve as examples for all of us. Number one, she was someone who was confident in who she was and who God was. We talked about that last week.
Yep.
This week, we're going to talk about the fact that Ruth was committed to influence. And at first, I have to admit, when I read that, I'm like, what does that mean to be
Yeah.
committed? But again, it
Yeah.
comes back to not being scattered or not being what we usually call, we like to refer to as a hot mess.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of that.
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean, I'm the first one to admit, like, I'm a hot mess sometimes, but
Yeah.
that's why I love the story of Ruth and how you point out that she really is full of that inner peace. So, explain, if you could, what it does mean to be committed to influence.
Yes. And committed to using our influence in a godly way.
Mhm.
Committed to godly influence, I think, is a great kind of setup for that. But when we talk about our influence, we're talking about our purpose. We're talking about what we do with our life, who we are, what are we about, what do we serve with our time, our effort, our talents, our gifts, and looking at how do we live out of a place of being committed to what God has called us to the roles, responsibilities, and relationships He's called us. Those three R's: the roles, the responsibilities that are God given, and the relationships that He has me in. And, when I think about that, just where it comes from in my own life, part of this aha in the writing of this
Mhm.
was, as a woman, we all quote want to be successful, or we've wanted to be, you know, live up to whatever our standard of a woman is.
Right.
It might be a worldly standard, it might be the Proverbs 31 woman, in the Christian world. And yet I think sometimes we put this weight on us, or these measuring lines of, you're supposed to be a supermodel, you're supposed to be Martha Stewart at home, you're supposed to like grow your own food and herbs and make your everything from scratch. And then you're supposed to, be a fitness star, and you're supposed to be a great mother and be at all the soccer games and all the stuff. And then you're supposed to be this, Wonder Woman wife. And oh, by the way, and if you have a career, and you should have a ministry. And, that's just kind of the beginning. And then we'll start adding on some of the extras. And, I think for women, that can just be like, what in the world? Like, how do I do all this? How do I know what I'm supposed to be doing and who I'm supposed to be? And then we can fall into this trap of listening to every voice and every message and thinking I'm supposed to be everything to everyone. And then we could also listen to this uh what was I just going to say about this? This idea that we have to live up to all of this stuff, and we can't. And
Mhm.
then we start what I was going to say was we start comparing ourselves then to everyone else too. So, when I go over to my friend's house and she has the gift of hospitality, and she has, she's like a semi-professional interior decorator wannabe, and I'm like, my house doesn't look like that. And then I go to my other friend's house and she's, I do have a friend like this right now, and she has her own chickens and she grows everything in her own yard. And, it's just like, I've never eaten store-bought food at her house. And I'm
Right.
like, oh my gosh, I am not Farmer Julie. I am failing because I am not a
Right.
farmer. And then I go over to my other girlfriend's house and, she's like training to be a bodybuilder or something. And you're like, okay, who am I and who am I supposed to be? And if we
Right.
compare, we are a mess.
Right. And so that's why when I was reading your book on this, it really, I think, freed me and made me realize through the example of Ruth
Yeah.
that being committed, if I am to prioritize
Hmm.
being committed to what's
Hmm.
in front of me, the
Yeah.
people that God puts in front of me, I can let go of everything else. All the things that we
Yeah.
put on ourselves, I can let go of that and simply decide to be committed. I love to look up definitions of things.
Yes.
We seem to do that in every episode.
We do
I
that. Yes.
don't mean to be redundant, but I thought this was really cool because,
Yeah.
to be committed simply means to be wholeheartedly dedicated. And I think about,
Mhm.
wow, you know, we're so scattered with so many
Yeah.
things, like you just said, that we've kind of forgotten what it is to be wholeheartedly committed. Let's just say to family,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
wholehearted. The opposite of that, the opposite of what it means to commit, is
Yeah.
really sad. It made me
Hmm.
sad in my heart, and it kind of caused my heart angst when I thought about it, because it means to be unattached,
Hmm.
faithless,
Hmm.
or to forfeit. And there's some things in my
Ouch.
life that I love and I don't want to forfeit.
Yeah.
So um to commit, I think, frees us up
Hmm.
to be wholehearted so that we don't forfeit the things that we love and that we're called to.
Yeah. Yeah. The people and the things. I think about roles, responsibilities in those roles often, and relationships and our responsibilities to relationship. And really, what this part of beauty is being diligent, focused, committed, and to use the opposite of those other definitions, to be attached. If I'm a mother, for example, I need to be attached to my children.
Mhm.
If I'm going to be committed to them, I'm attached. I don't forfeit my role as a mom. I don't squander it. Too often when we're in this please everyone, do everything mode, we don't do anything well. If you try to do everything, you won't do anything really well. You know what I mean? And we have to decide what it is God has called us to do. And if we try to just decide based on what the world tells us we're supposed to be, we are going to be in 20 directions,
Mm.
arrows pointed in 20 directions.
Mhm.
If we will spend the time and listen to the Lord, seek God, here's my identity. Who am I in Christ? And Amy, we are sweet friends. I love you dearly. And we are different.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things about us where we're similar and we click as friends, but we're also gifted different. And so we have to be willing to just say, God, how have you made me? How
Mm.
have you made me Julie? And what do you want me to be doing? And who do you want me to be? And what do you want me to pour my energy, my passion, my creativity, my time, my strength
Mhm.
into? And some of those will overlap. I mean, here we are, we're doing a podcast together. That overlapped, right? But
Right.
some of them may be different because God has also put different other things in each one of us. And so I think finding that place with the Lord and first saying, God, who have you called me to be? And one thing I would say on the very front end is too often we start on the peripheral of our vision and our purpose, and we skip over the core in the center. And what I mean by that is in a world that says you either have to have a job or a ministry, depending on which space you're in, to be significant, to have purpose, to be successful. And if we're already looking out there, that is a third or fourth tier thing.
Mm.
We forget the core, the center thing that every single one of us, no matter your gifting, is nurturing our relationship with Christ.
Mm.
My first relationship, role, and responsibility that I'm supposed to be committed to with all my heart is my relationship with the Lord.
Mm.
As a woman of God, that has to be my number one commitment. And then from there, it moves into the core relationships in your life. And if you are married, the next core responsibility, role, and relationship you should be committed to is your marriage.
Mm.
And then if you have children, the next one is your children. And then after that, you have, I think, your parents. I think you have your uh, best friends. And then you have your ministry. And then you have your job. I mean, it goes from the inside out. And sometimes, and then you have entertainment and fun. Okay. And I think no,
Right.
seriously, I think our world in this take care of yourself. And there is a place to nurture self-care and all those things. But really, the Lord, your relationship with the Lord is your best form of self-care, emotionally and otherwise. But I think the world has told us to flip that
Mm.
as women, what we should be focused on first and foremost are those fourth, fifth, eighth tier things. I
Mhm.
should be focused on decorating my house or my appearance, and I'm not saying neglect those things. Please don't hear me say that a godly woman just sits, in her little prayer closet and doesn't make dinner or doesn't clean her house. I'm not saying that, or doesn't take care of herself. I am saying that we have to go from the inside out. And
Right.
then and then those external things, those peripheral things are the overflow of this solid growing security and passion to serve others and serve God's purposes and all those things.
Right. Well,
Thinking something, Amy, I can see your face.
no, I know. There's so much,
Yeah,
I can say, and I'm sure I'll just say it, and I know it'll ruffle some feathers, but I mean, we do live in a
sure.
culture now where it is all about serving yourself,
Yeah.
and becoming who you want to be and doing whatever you need to do to get there. And then it doesn't matter what you sacrifice as long as you're happy, you know?
Mm, yeah.
Um, that is a very dangerous message
Mm-hmm.
because it leaves a lot of people lying in your wake, including
Mm-hmm.
your family. And then you get to the end of your life and you realized, that maybe you should have focused on what was a little bit more meaningful than your looks, which are fleeting. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm not saying not taking care of yourself. It's just that we've gotten so out of
Mm-hmm.
alignment. I think,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Ruth, again, going back to the example of Ruth in the Word, it's an amazing book. The whole,
Mhm.
book of Ruth. We encourage you to go to your Bible and read that. But you say in your book, you point out that she was not self-seeking. You know,
Mhm.
she did not look to glean life from others. Rather,
Mhm.
she committed to serving God's purposes in others' lives. She plugged into the strength of God. Ruth became a source of hope, faith, and love for others rather than seeking to gain life from others. Simply
Mhm.
stated, she was a giver, not a taker. And I
Mhm.
think we've all had people in our lives that we understand, you know, I think I've heard it called the fakers and takers. And
Oh yeah.
you know, you learn from experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who those people are, but those are not the people we want to be, and
No.
certainly not the people that we want to spend a lot of time with. Uh, we do want to be givers, but you have to decide to commit wholeheartedly, right?
Yeah. And really, it's a change of flow. And I just want to say something about contentment and true happiness and fulfillment. And, when we go through life with our hands out, looking to other experiences, relationships, and people to give to us, make me feel good, fill me up, make me important. We it's a selfishness that we don't always recognize because our culture promotes it and celebrates it really. And
Sure.
so this selfishness um has a new buzzword going around called narcissism. Right? People are talking about narcissists, and like we all are recovering narcissists. We are born narcissists. A
Right.
baby thinks of one person, themselves.
Right.
I'm hungry, mine, me, feed me, scream, cry. It's not able yet to empathize or realize there's anyone else's needs involved. The
Mhm.
baby is not like, my mom's sleeping, but I'm hungry. Should I scream for food? No. I mean, I'm not knocking the fact that we are born self first and in that way, but hopefully we're growing up to realize that joy and happiness and fulfillment come when we change that flow.
Mm,
When instead of wanting everything to flow to us from other people and situations, we allow God to fill us and love us, and then we allow it to flow out. One of the biggest cures for depression, for anxiety, for even grief and other things are do something for somebody else.
mhm,
Give something to go. If you're discouraged, go encourage somebody else. Do something loving for someone else.
mhm,
And it immediately fills us in a way that is life giving.
mhm,
So if you think about a river in stagnant water, when we just want everything to flow to us, it just sits there and stagnates and putrefies, if that's the word. I think I just combined two words, but it's yucky, right? It just turns into this swamp. But if we're letting God's love flow in us and flow through us, it is flowing. It is healthy water. It is active. And so the reversing um, that narcissism is being committed to godly influence. What is, I'm in this family, I'm in this community, I'm in this work or church environment. How does God want to use me and flow through me to bring life, to bring light, to bring love, to bring truth into this situation?
mhm,
And then there's purpose, even in difficult situations. If we allow ourselves to be committed to the roles, relationships, and responsibilities that God
mhm,
has assigned to us,
mhm. So,
even in difficult ones. Yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I mean, and Ruth found herself in a very difficult situation, right? We discussed last week. She was a woman who grew up in a very pagan culture. She was a Moabite woman, but happened to marry an Israelite that was in Moab to
Yeah,
escape a famine, and became part of that family, and definitely committed
yeah,
to a new life. Uh, when her husband died and her father-in-law died, her mother-in-law was going to go back to um, the promised land, right?
sure. Yeah,
And
back to Israel.
yeah, back to Israel. And, her mother-in-law told her to go back, told her to go back to her past, go back to her old family, go back to her old gods.
Yeah.
And she remained focused,
Mm-hmm.
committed, and said, no, your God is my God. I go where you go. I'll die where you die.
Yeah.
And she committed to walking alongside her mother-in-law
Mm-hmm.
to this new life. And really, once they got back to Israel, she developed a reputation for being this kind of very integrous uh, woman who was, I guess, again, the example of true
Faithful,
beauty, faithful,
faithful.
wholeheartedly devoted to her mother-in-law,
Yeah.
listened to her mother-in-law's advice, did what she could in the situation. You know, she was penniless. I mean,
Mhm.
and did what she could in the
Yeah. She
situation.
found herself in that really uncomfortable, hard situation. I mean, it's not just follow God's purposes for your life or your influence in a godly way in good situations. It's often when we are faced with hardship, we're faced with illness, we're faced with caregiving, we are faced with job loss, we are faced with a special a need in somebody's life in our family that is over and above our normal role, and we have to press in wholeheartedly to those roles and responsibilities in a way where at the end of the day we have been faithful.
Mm.
She was a daughter-in-law, she was a widow, and she pressed in to be faithful. She did the work that was available. She actually went gleaning, that's not a word we use very much, behind the harvesters, which means they would harvest the fields, but what dropped, they wouldn't go back a second time and pick up those things. The poor could come behind the harvesters and glean for themselves that extra grain that was missed. And that's how they fed the poor. And so she's out there working diligently, gleaning this extra grain. And next week, we're going to see how God uses that faithfulness, that being committed to her role and responsibility as a working, strong, able-bodied young woman to go to work and support her and her mother-in-law. God honors that faithfulness and that diligence and commitment
Mhm.
relationally as well, and we're going to see what that looks like. But Ruth didn't just get to Bethlehem and, go on the hunt. Like, priority number one, find a rich single man. I mean, that wasn't her priority.
Right.
And in fact, we're going to see that she, in fact, does find a very rich single man, but actually he finds her and becomes enthralled with this diligent, beautiful, confident, committed, humble, hardworking woman. And so, we need to look at what has God called us to do.
Mm.
That idea of there's one voice. We cannot live in a place of people pleasing and pleasing God. So we have to decide who's going to direct the show, who's going to tell me what to be part of, what not to be. And I need to really tune out even well-intentioned voices and listen to the
Mm.
voice of God.
That's
That's that one
advice right
voice.
there. Well-intentioned voices. Yeah, because we have
Yeah.
voices coming at us all the time.
Yeah.
You know what
And
really stands out? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was to say what really stands out to me too is as we're talking through this is, Ruth gleaned from one field.
Yeah.
She was focused.
Yeah.
She was both focused, committed to that one field, and God
Mm-hmm.
abundantly blessed her as
Yeah.
because she could have, tried to, you know, get what she needed from all kinds of places, throwing
Mm.
herself around. But she didn't. She committed to the one place that her mother-in-law told her to go. I like what you write here about Ruth. You say, and again, this goes back to those of you who feel that pressure to do it all and be all for all people.
Mm-hmm.
You say Ruth committed to the roles, responsibilities, and relationships God gave her. She willingly laid down all other competing interests and goals. She didn't try to be everything to everyone. She didn't try to do it all. She surrendered her own will and entrusted herself to the will of God. She did
Mm-hmm.
not devise her own plans and self-directed goals. Rather, she submitted them to the purposes of God. She didn't go chasing rabbit trails and dream of escaping her reality. Instead, Ruth followed the path God laid before her. She
Mhm.
wholeheartedly engaged in fulfilling her responsibilities and honoring her relationships in the presence or in the
Mhm.
present. So she wasn't trying to please everyone. She wasn't divided. She wasn't conflicted.
Mhm. And ultimately, she trusted God with his direction for her life. Because I think it's important to clarify one other piece here.
Mhm.
Being committed to your godly roles and responsibilities does not mean have no dreams.
Mm.
You know, it doesn't mean have no ambition. We are not saying that at all. More, we're saying let God put his dream for your life inside of you because the Bible clearly says God gifted you, has a plan and purpose for you, has good works that he prepared in advance for you to do. It means that God has put desires and wired you in a way, and then he calls us into spaces and places to be those people, whether it's in a family or whether it's in a ministry or both, or whatever those things are. It's not like God's will for you is going to just be this, oh, this terrible little place. And I have to, I mean, he didn't make us to be small and invisible. And that is not what humility or meekness means or surrender to God. If you surrender to God and obey him, it will be the most fulfilling thing you've ever done in your life. And so I want to, when I was young, I want to share this. I had this idea like if I really let God direct my life and be Lord of my life, I mean, my biggest fear was I was going to be bored. Because what do Christians do? They just go to church and sing in the choir, and I don't sing. So no offense to singers. I have a daughter who's big sing, but I'm like, oh, I was made for adventure. I am that person who likes a lot of stuff going on and I want to, conquer the next hill. And I was like, and God actually challenged me and basically said, I dare you, which he knows how he wired me, saying, I dare you to follow me. I had to do it, right?
Right, right.
Just because I was dared. But God knew how he had wired me. And
Mhm.
you know what? Trusting and obeying God has been the adventure of a lifetime. It hasn't all been easy. It hasn't all been roses and sunshine, but it has never been boring. Even when things are hard, every now and then, God and I have this little inside joke, but I can feel him sort of like leaning over and just kind of whispering in my ear, are you bored yet? And I'm like, I'm not bored. And a lot of things. I might be scared to death. I might be sad. I might be excited beyond belief. But one thing, I have never been bored because he knows how he wired me. And for somebody else, he wired them for totally different gifting, totally different calling. And he will match us to how he made us. He's going to match your calling and your purpose to how he made you in a way that will be fulfilling, that you can partner with him and do this journey and walk this walk together in a way that if you will commit to following him and obeying him, it will be the most fulfilling space and place you will ever find yourself.
Amen. Well, that's a good way to end it. We'll end it on that note because we're out of time. But any final thoughts, Julie?
I dare you to trust and obey God. I dare you, trust and obey him. Your life will change and you'll be able to say no to all the stuff that is not of him and then fill your life with what he has placed in and for you to do.